I really appreciate everybody joining us today. This is primarily going to be an informational session. So we're going to walk you through a few things on the outline of our current position relative to our membership system and some of the other pieces of technology that we use. We're going to talk to you about the RFP process that we went through for selecting a new system. We're going to tell you a little bit about what RX does. I'll refer to it by both RX and Rugby Xplorer, the formal name today. We're going to tell you a little bit about how it hopefully makes your job easier. That's going to be Jess's part. She'll take you through a live demo in the system of some of the things that it does. Then we're going to talk a little bit about next steps. So the next training that we're going to be doing, what you're going to need to bring to that next training with you. That next training is actually going to be getting you into the system, and we'll do some walkthroughs of getting things set up, and we'll tell you the schedule of future meetings and trainings there. If you have any questions, there's just a couple of us here. Feel free to jump in the chat, raise your hand, or unmute at a good moment. I'll run through some introductory stuff here. So if you want to catch me as part of this, that's fine, or I'll take a break for questions at the end before we go to Jess. So status quo. The short answer is we know that the implementation of the Sport Lomo system over the last 2 years has been challenging, not only for you all, but for us as well. And we've certainly received your feedback both directly and from your board members. And resultantly, in the fall of 21, the USA Rugby board, including your members, asked us to go look at, did we believe that we could continue forward with Sport Lomo? Were there issues that could be solved to make it work for us? And if not, what did we need to do to find another system that would handle us better? And what other options were there on the market? So when we looked at that first part, there were actually just unfortunately too many issues that we felt with Sport Lomo were not solvable. The registration flow is particularly difficult and challenging. It is hard for the way that we're set up, where people transfer clubs all the time, which really leads to a lot of duplicate creation to the rate of about 30% of our overall membership each year. We're creating a new version of themselves, which made it very difficult to track our data or to make sure that the next point, compliance and certification tracking, were working properly. Because if you got new members, nothing's syncing up in the right way. In addition, the actual interface with the Center for Safe Sport and background screening, both to get out and do those things and then also to track them for you all as admins here on the call, was very difficult, and that wasn't really something we could overcome. And the competition management interface, some people may have used it. It is functional. It does work, but actually getting it set up was pretty hard. And we didn't feel that that was something that was, we could drive compliance for people to actually use that. In addition, one of the underlying system challenges for us, and has been challenging as we've worked through it with the communities, is a lot of service tasks that you would expect us to be able to do. Change somebody's email, reset their password, help set up or make transfers. We couldn't do that stuff because of the way Sport Lomo's backend works. So we were always reliant on Ireland to set up new clubs for us, do any of these things. And we didn't feel that was the best position for us to be in, to be able to manage the relationship with our members, our customers, everybody else moving forward. So that was another reason we had to make a change. So we went back and the board asked us to go look at what else was on the market that could handle us. Just a couple of things to note. We are, as it turns out, a relatively difficult customer just because of the complexity of what we are. We have multiple tiers of governance. The way that we're split out is different. Those tiers are not the same depth. We require payment splitting at point of purchase. That actually was one of the reasons Sport Lomo was originally selected. They were one of the only people on the market that could do that at the time of the RFP that selected them. Now, thankfully, there's a lot of other systems on the market that can do that, but it is specialized for us. So we looked at best-in-class membership systems from 3 primary areas. 1, from other rugby entities. 2, from the rest of the NGB space, people inside the USOPC. And 3, we went outside of rugby or outside of the NGBs and looked at what other sports we're using. So who are the leaders in that? You can kind of see the list here on the right, some of the ones you'd recognize. Sports Engine, who's one of the biggest players in America. We looked at Rugby Xplorer and SA Rugby, so that's from South Africa and Australia. We'll talk a lot more about Rugby Xplorer. Matchbacks, Fuse Sport, and Sport 80. Sport 80 was the RFP award winner for the USOPC, so a lot of the NGBs are on it. Once we got this initial list of systems, we started doing demos with each one of those systems, focused on the user journeys, payments, all the things that we knew we were having difficulty with, and the lessons that we learned from Sport Lomo. It's pretty easy for us to make an initial cull from the long list to a short list. Actually, the payments and the ability to split it did the job for us, and it took us down to Match Facts, RX, FuseSport, and Sport 80. FuseSport was the platform that youth in high school were pursuing. They'll now be moving into the integration with RX with us. MatchFacts is a new system on the market. We just thought it had a lot of promise, but it wasn't tested yet. And Sport 80, while it had a lot of things for the NGB space, so the integrations with compliance were great, there was a question about its ability to actually handle team sports. So that really kind of narrowed us into Rugby Xplorer. Now, a couple things there, that it really set us up for as we made that last call. One was we have the ability to actually control all the support. I'll talk a little bit more about how it's set up here in just a second, where Jess and her team, the people that you actually care about and talk about, who are much friendlier than me, who most people don't want to talk to, they are able to actually do the things that our members need to do to serve them. Reset passwords, as I said, all the normal stuff you'd expect. It also sets us up organizationally for what we're referring to as our digital transformation. So we're trying to get USA Rugby, I wouldn't even say to the current, because we're definitely way further than that behind, but into somewhere in the last 5 years of what we're doing. So the membership system is a piece of that. And it's actually a change in the way that we view our data. Where our membership system has always been the single source of truth, we're actually moving to have a background database, which then feeds the membership system, takes in data from the membership system to allow us to have something that's more modern in terms of a view that an organization like ours would expect to have, that can also integrate with ticketing data, with fan data, with other sources to give us kind of a holistic view of what we are moving forward. That's really setting us up for the next stage of our evolution. In addition, RX is completely app-based, which we'll talk about, which is really important for us in terms of meeting our members where they are, which is right here, increasingly. It's not on a computer. We also wanted to have a deeper technology understanding of what we were doing. That was one of the failings that we recognized in the system and the first time that we went through with the Sport Lomo RFP, which I'll get into more in a little bit. But we had an outside analyst who is contracted with us to come in and look at it from a technology perspective. Now, his initial feedback was actually we were better using something off the shelf, so Sports Engine, something else. But as they got further and further into our system, they realized that as rugby consumers, what we need is very specialized. So ultimately, they went and chose, independently from us, that RX was the best choice for us in terms of where they were. The next step was then to go in and look at, was RX actually capable of handling us? What's their development roadmap? How are they going to handle issues on the background? How is their data set up? How can they support us as a customer? So working with our technology advisor, we were able to come to a situation where we were very comfortable with that. I'll tell you more about it in just a second, but it guided the way that we built our relationship with RX. They gave us a lot more control over development. So what does RX do? RX is a couple things. It's primarily a membership registration system. As I said, it's app-based and it's also online. So we do have some online capabilities, but primarily your members will interface with it on the phone. So they'll download RX, they'll do their registration there. It also does competition management. So we'll jump around here on these. The competition management, again, it's all phone-based. One of the complaints that we had for a long time with the previous CMS, that it wasn't mobile friendly, which ultimately is the direction that we know everybody's heading. So whether your teams are doing it, your coaches are entering rosters, or people are doing the live scoring in a match, everything's in the app. All of that integrates through into the app where other people can watch those scores, watch the games as they actually happen live, which is really great for us. In addition, the CMS has case management, so red cards, yellow cards, concussions. It's going to track all of those things, which ties into the membership and prevents people from being added to a team sheet if they are suspended by your disciplinary processes. We also had it set up so that it deals with one login across multiple organizations. I'm sure every single person on this call is a member of a club, a GU, a TU, a college conference, possibly one of the organizing bodies. You currently have multiple logins to Sport Lomo. We wanted to simplify that. And it also has a system of certification and accreditation tracking and club pays. I won't go into that too much because Jess is going to hit on a lot of these things. So the natural question is, yeah, we heard that with Sport Lomo. How'd that go? Which I get, and you're not wrong. And I think the answer is what we really focused on this time was changing the dynamics of the way that selection process worked and the way that we went about developing the system. So as I mentioned earlier, we had a consultant who came in and worked with us on this. Daryl was able to help us structure the contract in a way that we actually have dedicated developers just working on our needs. So for the last 4 months, we've had more than one, actually we're paying for one, we get more than one developer just adapting the system to what we need for USA Rugby, which was actually great because it helps, Rugby Xplorer change some things to make themselves more marketable. We have that development support all the way through the end of the year, and we'll look at extending it. The good thing about that is it gives us more time to continue the development process. On August 1st, when we launch, things are not going to be perfect. We're going to get to the point that, and we are at the point now, where we feel comfortable that we can hit all the things that our community needs, but we want to continually find a feedback loop of learn, refine, develop, and then learn again so that we can make the project as successful as possible and make it really easy for you as admins and for your club users to use it. One of the other things that we did was we engaged in a series of community sessions in Q1 and Q2 to really guide us on what the development priorities were. We at the national office interact with these systems every day. We have certain ideas, but that doesn't mean that it translates into your life, into your members' lives about what you're doing. So we had a series of meetings to define what those priorities were. We first wanted to outline the pain points of, what the current system was. We need to know also what the system that we currently have doesn't do that you want. What is your ideal scenario as an admin for what a system will provide for you or for your members? And we use that guidance to build our roadmap, what we call our red line or yellow line items, or get us to a minimum viable product, however you want to go, to be ready by August 1st. So I'll just breeze through these a little bit, but it's a comparison of the pain points and requests on the high end of what we were looking at, where they were in Sport Lomo and how our users rated them, and where we got to with RX. Support and documentation is a big one. Can you go and watch a video, or is there a PDF that actually tells you reliably what's going on in the system? Which is great. We've got that one. Multiple logins, background check, safe sport. I'm really excited about that, which honestly makes me seem so nerdy, but you would not believe how hard it is to actually get that right. And I think, RX has really nailed it for us. Different ways to pay. So payment splitting is well on top of that. So if you have team paying, individual paying, or invoice, we can handle all those. Jess will go through it. Anyway, a lot of this stuff you can see later as we go through it. Some other things that were medium-low issues, so the emails, transfers, the way that we handle transfers in the system. You can't change your date of birth, which is really important for some of the youth organizations where we maybe had some issues with that. Being able to see all the data from years of history of playing, we wanted to make sure we got all those things done. And I think, as Jess goes through her demo here in just a second, we're really excited about what we've been able to achieve with RX so far. We hope that we're addressing the majority of what our users need from their feedback. And we're excited to get you into the system and get your feedback about it as well. So just quickly, Jess is going to take us through some demos just to, as a review. This is an overview, not a specific training. So if there's some really specific questions, we'll probably bump you into the training sessions when we can really go into those things a little more in depth as a walkthrough, because Jess is going to cover a lot of ground today. Feel free to ask her questions. We'll send you away with some information that you need to bring back, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Jess will also say this is a live environment that we're working in as we continue to get things up and running. So there'll be a couple things that you see that'll get changed before August 1st, language, some of the other stuff that we knew those were easier changes to make later, and we concentrated on some of the bigger stuff. But with that, I'll stop the share. I'm going to shut up because nobody wants to hear me talk, and answer if you have any questions before we move across to Jess.
Perfect. That means more questions for me at some point, I'm sure. Hi guys, just give me one moment to go ahead and get set up. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. As Jonathan mentioned, this is going to be a live environment, so there might be a couple things that you see, like he mentioned again, that'll have information changed and updated to reflect USA Rugby branding, USA Rugby verbiage, and some things that are a bit more applicable to us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just get started. RugbyX or Rugby Xplorer, RX, everyone will have their own account within the system. So in order to get started, I'm going to log into my account. And once you're logged in, you'll be able to actually add your registration for the current season. So once we're logged in here, just give it a moment to go ahead and load. You'll see that it's going to give me the opportunity to enter in my password, which takes me inside and then takes me right into my actual member information. On the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see a very easy to use toolbar. I'll highlight on a couple of these items before I walk you through the registration process. As Jonathan mentioned, the safe sport and background check was something that we really wanted to be able to give to you guys and to highlight, because we know that it's been a bit of a pain to go through the process through Sport Lomo. So I just wanted to show you briefly that safe sport. You'll select the option right here. You'll select which of your accounts that you're logged into to go through the process, take the training, and it'll be added directly. So you won't have to go through an event checkout process. You won't have to download and save a certificate from a separate website, anything like that. You'll just go directly through. And the same can be said for the background check as well. You'll select background check, enter in your information, make sure that everything is up to date and as applicable as possible, and use the option at the very bottom that says request background check to send this off to NCSI and get that taken care of for your compliance, for all your coaches, your administrators, whatever that might look like. So to go ahead and get started, just going to walk you through the registration process. As Jonathan mentioned, we wanted it to be as quick, as seamless, and as pain-free and user-friendly as possible. So you'll kind of see how quickly we can get through this right here without, many questions or the confusion that has arisen with Sport Lomo. So here you can see that you can link accounts. So this is helpful for those with parents, children, brothers and sisters that are all playing rugby. But for right now, we're going to go through the registration as if we're a brand new person. So bear with me as I'm going to have to enter in this information, and I'm not the best typer in the world. And all this will be auto defaulted to the USA. So we're going to enter in the information to go ahead and start our profile, or our registration, get signed up, which will take us to the next stage of the process, which will then be selecting where we're registering and with what role we're registering. You'll see at the bottom as well, there's a nice progress bar to know where you're at in the process. So if for whatever reason you get called away, you'll know how much you've gone through or how much more is left. So we created our registration under Rugby Dombrowski. We'll select that one to register to. We are part of USA Rugby, and today we're going to be registering with the Swamp Dogs team. If I can spell it correctly. All right, give me a moment. We'll find a team that's showing up here. We're just gotta go here. All right, so we've selected our team, and this next page will give us the option to select where or what role and type we're registering to. So right now we're just going to register as a senior club player within the Swamp Dogs team with a duration of an entire season. And again, it's important to note as well that the only options you will see available here are the ones that have been opened for your team. So you won't have youth players accidentally registering to a senior club. It's going to make it very easy for those members that may have gotten lost in the past to make sure that they are in the right place. Make sure that all of our personal information is correct before we continue on. You have the ability to upload a profile photo. So perhaps this is something that your organization has required. This will allow members to go ahead and do this right here. If they're doing this on their phone through the app, they can take a selfie right on the side of the pitch as well, and they can always go back to add this at a later date. So go ahead and we'll enter in all of our information. Again, as you can see, some of this will be changed and updated to reflect what we and the USOPC need to collect from our standpoint. So you can disregard some of this terminology as it'll be updated to be a little bit more familiar with what we've been doing. We'll enter in the emergency contact details because we know this is something important that all organizations need to keep track of. Which then takes us to the part where we can add additional questions. So here, each organization and each tier might have additional pieces of information that they're trying to collect from their members. At the moment, we're going to be limiting each tier to 3 questions at the most. And the reason that this is done is because as you get 5 and 6 tiers deep, that can add an additional 18 questions to the registration process that we want to make as quick and as efficient as possible. So if there is information that you or other organizations are looking to collect, we can go ahead and help you guys add a collaborative effort to make sure that all of that is added succinctly on here. And if there is if you cannot be limited to 3 questions, if you perhaps need something a little bit above and beyond that, we can go ahead and add in some links that can send you outside of this portal as well to add in all of that information and get those members to hand over the information that you're looking to collect from them. These can be anything from, as you can see, open-ended questions, multiple choice, checkbox, et cetera, et cetera. So give me one moment to go ahead and answer these questions. We'll continue on through. And then this last part of the page, you'll be able to see that you can add saleable items. We won't be having this live for the August 1st rollout. However, this is something that we'll be able to utilize at a later date, just so that you can see that the functionality is there if this is something that you would wish to utilize. And right now, socks are required as part of the test environment, so we're just going to add that to the cart. All right. And then as you can see here, you get a nice registration summary of the information for the player that you're registering, what role you're registering in, where that's going, what the total of that looks like. There will be a drop-down option that'll give you a breakdown of USA Rugby fees, senior club fees, college fees, whatever team fees you might be collecting, so that the member and the participant that's going through the registration process will see where all of that money is going. And that way it'll help and alleviate any confusion for when you get those calls that, hey, I paid $120 to USA Rugby. I don't know where that money's going. It'll be nice, cut and clean right there. We do have the ability as well to continue on with adding discount codes, similar to how you've been utilizing them in Sport Lomo. And we'll be sending that out and including that as part of the trainings as well. So right now we'll go through and we'll just add in our test credit card details. To make that payment. And you'll see right here, your registration is complete. So we went through that process in about 5 minutes, and that's with all of my talking. So you can see how quick and easy it is for those members to go ahead and get through the registration process. As you can see right now, the multiple role registration is something that the development group is working on. As we know, many rugby players and coaches wear multiple hats. This won't be ready for the August 1st rollout. However, it will be ready very soon after. So at the moment, if you're registering as a player, as well as a coach and a referee, you'll need to go back and complete the process for each of those separate roles. But please know that they're in the process of making this a one-stop shop to get that all taken care of in one fell swoop as well. So before I go ahead and shift gears a little bit, do we have any questions on the registration process as a whole?
Quick question about registering for multiple roles. It won't be ready August 1st. So if someone needed to register for multiple roles shortly thereafter, they'd have to do it separately from one another. Would they be required to pay separately, or would it recognize that they've previously paid for one registration?
Payment conversions are set up, Bill. Or sorry, I think that was Bill, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was Bill.
So the payment conversions are set up, so you won't have to pay for each one and then go back to do a refund or anything. So it'll recognize that you've already paid the USAR or other portions. We just don't have the, you can do 4 tick boxes without having to go back through and click to do the separate registration again, part done. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I think the pain point would be paying 4 times. Yeah. But if they got to go through it, it'll be, we'll make that work.
Great. Yeah. And as Jess said, it's just not going to be ready for August 1st, but it is in the development schedule for the fall.
Perfect. So that was the front end registration process, and what you're looking at right now is what the member would see inside their own profile. So we're gonna go ahead and switch a little bit. As you can see, I'm an administrator, so I have an option that says admin portal in the left-hand toolbar here. So we're just gonna switch over to that point of view, which is applicable to you guys. As Jonathan mentioned, we know that it's definitely a pain to go ahead and keep track of multiple logins for different tiers or council levels or organizations, clubs, whatever that might look like. So as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, you'll just have a simple drop down that you can change perspectives depending on what hat you're wearing that day. So right now I'm an admin for USA Rugby. I'm an administrator as a club for Alta Vista High School, and I'm listed as a council administrator for youth and high school. So as opposed to having different logins to go in and out or different back-end links, you'll just change to the admin portal and select which hat you're wearing that day, which will log you in as that administrator. Wendy, we can go over that last part for development schedule at the end. Yes. Additionally, if you've been added as an administrator, so all of you will obviously be added as administrators and have those privileges. As such, you'll be able to add other individuals with those privileges at your level or any level below. So if you're at the senior club council level, you can add anyone else to have privileges and access to that level, as well as any of the conferences or GUs underneath you, and as well as any clubs underneath that. So it's kind of a nice tiered section that you won't have to send me an email, wait for me to get back to you with a response to set up and tag you in that information. And what that looks like is you would just search for that individual. Perhaps I'm looking for Jonathan in our system, and I would go ahead and just link him to whatever level, tier, organization, club that he needs that access for. And it's done instantaneously. The member would receive an email that that's been added, and then they would be able to go ahead and utilize that immediately. As you can see here, I'm logged as a club admin. So at the top, there's a couple of white boxes as they're working through the live environment, but you can see a nice overview of some of those compliance things that I'll touch base on a little bit later. But just to give you an idea, this is what it would look like, and it would have a nice overview of all of those administrator nuggets of information and registrations that you're looking for. All right. So I know a lot of you are very familiar with the historical bulk import, bulk upload process. So what has happened with that is that process has been updated a little bit to give each club the ability to pay however is applicable to them. So each club will have 3 different options to pay for players' registration. The first option, player pays, is what I just walked through. You know, a player sits at home on their couch, goes through the registration process, pulls out their individual personal credit card, pays for their registration, and they're done and dusted, ready to go and be added to a roster to play that weekend. There's also the option for auto payment. So what this does is, let's say a club is looking to utilize and cover all of their player registrations, or a college, you know, maybe a sport club department is looking to utilize those funds as well. So a player would still go in as themselves, register, go through the process, tick off those terms, conditions, and waivers. And instead of paying with their own personal credit card at the end, this would get charged to a card that has been kept on file at the club level, which then would send a notification to the club administrator, hey, so-and-so just paid and registered, your club was charged X amount of dollars, and they're good to go. The third option is very similar. However, it's more of a manual payment. So if you perhaps want to go to your school athletic department at the end of the month with an invoice that says, hey, there's 20 players that registered this year, this is how much the registration fee would be, and then they can log in and pay with that via a card that they have on file that you necessarily might not have access to, or maybe they want to send us a check, or you guys have a check, we can go through that option as well. But this way, every single club has the ability to select which payment and registration option is the most applicable to them without having to go through the hassle of trying to work through a couple different hoops on that end. So we're pretty excited about this because it gives clubs the flexibility and the convenience to get all of this taken care of, and gives you as administrators the ability to look up different invoices or any other outstanding items and track all of that from your admin point of view as well. So before I go ahead and continue on to a couple other things, do we have any questions on the registration payment process or the options that go along with that? Perfect. All right. Ooh, I like a thumbs up.
Actually, I tried to raise my hand. I don't know if that's what you wanted, but anyway, I don't know if this is the time, but I have a process and a kind of a philosophical question. We have a re-emerging program in our conference, and given the financial challenges, is there, and I've talked to Rich Cortez about this, or our schools are members of the ACR. If that school, could we grant them access to play rugby by registering with USA Rugby, get their insurance and their membership taken care of, but not pay any ACR fees? And again, is that a philosophical question we need to sort out? And can the system handle that? So if that school and those players were to go in, they would just register for USA Rugby. Does that make sense?
There's probably 2 answers to that, Gil. One is yes, it is a philosophical question for the Rich and ACR, component of that for you guys to work out. In terms of the payment, it'd probably be a little bit complicated, but we could figure that out. I mean, there's ways for us to go in and mark things as paid. We just have to do something a little different.
Okay. it'll get sorted out on our end.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to briefly go over the communications aspects that the system has the ability to offer. This was something that we got a lot of feedback on through Sport Lomo, is we know that a lot of individuals at your level or club level, whatever that might look like, want to reach out to their members. So there's a simple communications option where you can send emails from you to the players or the coaches, administrators, whoever that might be from the system. So as you can see on this screen, you can go ahead and tailor this down to the specific demographic that you want to reach, whether that might be a specific role, a specific age. Maybe you want to reach out to people that were registered with you historically and have not registered for this season to give them a bit of a push. Whatever that might look like, you can tailor all of that down using these options here on the top of the screen. You can enter in your email information and send it out directly through the system. Additionally, I think it's important to mention that because this is an app as well, we can send out push notifications the exact same way. And this will be sent out directly to those members that are part of your organization that have the app. You know, perhaps you want to send something out that says, hey, get your paperwork in, or hey, there's an eligibility deadline, practice is canceled tonight, whatever that might look like, depending on what hat you're wearing that day. You can get that sent out and that'll go directly to the members that have the app downloaded on the phone, because we know not everyone always checks their emails in the most timely manner. So we're personally very excited about that one because it's going to be a nice way for you guys to get the information that you have out to the members that actually need it at a moment's notice. And for the next part, I'm going to go ahead and just switch gears just a little bit and log into a slightly different portal. This one has a little bit more of live data for the next part that I'm going to go ahead and show you. So give me 1 second to get sorted here. As you can see, it's a very similar setting, but now we're just through the Rugby Australia version of things so that we can actually show you some of the accreditations and other information that you might be looking for. So we know that tracking compliance for coaches, referees, and administrators has been a bit difficult in Sport Lomo. Between the safe sport and background screening ease that I showed you at the beginning, as well as this tracking feature, hopefully it's going to alleviate a lot of that headache that kind of goes along with following up or trying to be proactive and tracing people on their certifications. So as you can see here, this is the accreditation section. I'm going to be using some of those terms interchangeably for, just to give you an idea. But as of right now, you have all of these options for Rugby Australia. These will be changed over to reflect the ones that we have with USA Rugby that you're a bit more familiar with, whether that's safe sport, background screening, level 1, World Rugby coaching certification, referee, etc. And through this section, you'll be able to search for individuals that either have or inversely don't have certifications to follow up with them, be proactive in making sure that some of these things are taken care of. So just to show you a quick demo, I'm going to go ahead and search for members that have a current Smart Rugby accreditation. You know, you can use that as safe sport, as that's what it's going to look like for us. And we're going to search that. It gives you a nice breakdown instantaneously of those members, their information, the email to reach out to them, as well as where they're located. And if you were looking for people that don't have the right certification, you can change that as well and where that to follow up on with them. And all of this can be exported for your own tracking purposes. You can also do a search for a combination of these credentials or accreditations. You know, perhaps you're looking for individuals that don't have a safe sport or a background screening to send them an email as well. And you can go ahead and tack on those and take a look to follow up through here. So as you can see, it's much more simple than running a couple different reports at different levels to kind of cross-reference, and all the information is in one place, which is personally on my end, I'm very excited about that. All right, so we got some questions in the chat that Jamie and Jonathan are answering. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue on real quick into the competition side of things. So RX has an integrated competitions management platform that, as most of you know, membership is my forte, competitions is not, and yet this is something that I'm comfortable and confident enough to go ahead and show you. So that's how simple it is to use. And I learned it in about a day once Amy was here as well. So this gives you a place to load all of your competitions. As you can see them all listed in here. In one level deeper, you can go into this and you can also look at your matches for the season. You know, you can click into this, it'll show you historical information such as the score line, who scored, substitutions, anything that you might need to look into a specific match or a specific competition. It's all going to be through this portal. without having to try and keep track of this in a separate area or outside of the system. Similarly, one thing that Jonathan had mentioned is the competition cases section. So perhaps something happened in a match that you want to follow up on, whether that's a red card, a yellow card, maybe there was some foul play. The system has the ability to track a case and tag it into games and individuals as well. So I'm just going to show you a brief example of this one. So right here, we have an example that happened during a Cougars match and a Swamp Dogs match where someone got into a little bit of trouble and looks like they got a red card because they got 2 yellow cards. So all of this information is in one area. We can add in additional notes for any follow-ups or conversations that might had. And most importantly, you'll notice at the bottom, you can add in an availability date for that player. Perhaps they're suspended for 2 weeks and they're not allowed to return to play until those 2 weeks are up. You can enter in that date, and that will prevent this player from being added into a team roster on both your team or any other team in the system as well. So you're not going to have someone that might be barred from team A, try and shirk around and go play with team B or C. This is going to prevent them from being added in where they shouldn't be, so that they can live out the duration of that suspension or whatever that incident might have looked like. So I'm going to go ahead and switch into just show you how the live scoring works real quick, unless anyone has any questions on the competitions, matches, or the competition cases section. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just switch over here. So as you can see, right now we're going to be going to the Swamp Dogs U16s University U16s match. This is essentially all of the matches that have been created within a competition. So to show you how a match would be scored if you're looking to add in all this information, we're just going to select into it. You'll see on this first screen, there's a couple of tabs at the bottom. You've got team list, match day, squad list, and more. This is where you would enter in your roster. You can tailor jersey numbers. We know some teams don't necessarily have the typical 1 through 23, depending on sizes. You can add in different players. You can add in who the coach is going to be on that day. And the only individuals that are going to show up as available to be used are ones that have registered, they have been cleared, they've met those certain, compliance requirements, and they're basically people that have gone through all of the correct channels to get registered and in good standing with our organization, your organization, and everywhere else. So once you have your team roster, you'll be able to go into the game itself. And you'll have the ability to score your team or score both teams, depending on what your organization has deemed its process. So as you can see on this first page, you'll have anything that relates to scoring. We've got options for different movements. You'll be able to see a live feed of the game, as well as add any additional follow-up information to those competition cases. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and add in that number 1, Jake Bainbridge. He was great. He scored a try in the first 4 minutes of the game. And you'll see at the top that automatically updates to show you the live feed of the game, so on and so forth. So as I mentioned, the feed, that's going to show you kind of a minute by minute breakdown. So this will help a lot of your number 4s. You'll be able to check this in the historical record as well. Let's say that something else happened that was not the best. Let's go over here. We need, we'll just add in a couple penalty try. You can just see as this is instantaneous. We've done a couple of demos of this, and Amy over in Australia will be doing the same thing. You'll be able to see up on the top that all of this has been automatically updated. So again, if you add in different cards, if you add in an incident, that's going to be able to track that through that competition case that we have, and you'll be able to follow up and have those conversations with the applicable individuals on what the outcome of that might look like. So it's all instantaneous. Once you're done entering in your information, you'll have the ability to lock a match. Your opposition, if they're scoring theirs as well, will also have the ability to do that. And it's going to show you what they have entered in so that you can both agree like, hey, all of it looks correct, good to go. You've both locked and loaded, signed out on it, and it'll be set in stone in the system so that you can't go back and change it at a later date if you wanted to. And then you as an administrator will be able to go back in on the back end, look at all that historical information, and just make sure you have a live feed of the game that's applicable to you guys. And again, this is all has the ability to be done through an app, and it's designed to be done through an app so it can be done on the sidelines right after the game. And you have the ability as well to assign different administrators on a weekly basis, if you'd like to, for different individuals to have access to this aspect of the system. So maybe you have a parent volunteer, maybe you have an injured player that wants to get their hand at competition stuff. You'll be able to kind of add in those people with administrator privileges so that they have the ability to do this as well.
Jamie JC has a question about referee components here. Do you want to hit on that?
Yeah, the system does have access for referees. However, it's not a fully featured referee management system, the way that some other systems like RefUp or Who's the Ref or Arbiter are. So there are certain aspects where the referees can be assigned to matches and do some things, but that will be an area for development going into future seasons. So we anticipate that referee societies will use the same systems they're currently using in the short term. And then as we build up more functionality, there'll be an opportunity for them to move across to this system in the future.
So essentially that kind of concludes my competitions overview of the live scoring. So unless anyone has any additional questions on this, I'm going to turn it back over to Jonathan for some general overview, some follow-up, and essentially what the next steps are.